Hi, everyone. Welcome to a brand new podcast called How We Love Now. I am Arela Agako, a clinical psychologist, and I'm here with.
Keana. So I am founder of Chaima. I'm a COO and date planner of Chaima. And we came together because we see the need of modern love and helping couples of today.
Yeah, and I am a psychologist and also the CEO of the Repair app, which is a conflict resolution app for couples that's meant to foster conversations, teach people how to use different skills, and just improve their relationship overall. So, the way that Kiana and I actually met and why we decided to do this podcast is she reached out to Repair, trying to introduce Chima, and one thing led to another. She's a therapist, I'm a therapist. So we're really bonded over that. And we're like, it would be really cool to talk a little bit about love in like the modern age. There's so many other podcasts out there, but none that really talk about how tech actually affects our relationships, whether romantic ones or non-romantic ones.
I'll say we connected very well because our missions align. Repair really repairs relationships, conflict resolution skills, and we provide date planning for couples. And so both of our apps go hand in hand in helping relationships become successful.
Yeah, and it's so interesting because I think in a lot of ways we're at targeting like different parts of like the relationship. So for me, it's like how to reduce conflict, how to actually get couples to talk, and for you guys, it's how to build more of these like positive experiences. So we're like, let's reduce the negative ones. You're like, let's increase the positive ones. So I think it's very symbiotic, and I think the apps like really go hand in hand. Like both of those like are so important in our relationships, especially in the age of technology.
And I will say it does go hand in hand because even with your app, com- working through conflict, let's say someone wants to go on a date and haven't been on a date in years, right?
Mm-hmm.
It does help reduce that conflict that may arise even on that date. Because
Yes.
it's like, why, now you want to take me out. It's already those
Mhm.
assumptions that's formulating on that date.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so interesting because now I find that even like within like my clinical practice, like people will talk about apps and ChatGPT and all of these things that they're trying to improve their relationship. Like I hear all the time like people using ChatGPT as like a therapist almost. It's like my partner says this, like how do I respond to it or what does this mean? Which is really interesting because I think with AI starting, we're really seeing that shift of people, it's almost like a third person in the relationship.
hmm And I think the biggest concern with the AI piece, too, a lot of people think AI is causing more isolation onto couples or anyone's society. And I think if we reframe it, sharing that we are enhancing relationships, we put the focus on we're not replacing, we're enhancing.
Yeah. And in a lot of ways, I feel like with AI in relationships, it's the best way to start incorporating it a bit more. Because I think there, like when you talk to ChatGPT, when you are talking to these different like AI programs, like it doesn't really feel like you're talking to a human. Whereas in relationships, it's almost like serves to like facilitate conversations. So you're not losing out on like that human connection. And right before we started recording this, you were saying, Kiana, about like that's actually been your experience with Chima. Did you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Yes, so I will say recently we've been booking dates for a lot of couples, and one of the concerns and challenges couples have is coordinating schedules,
Mhm.
demands of families, and finding sitters for their kids. And that's what has taken a toll on the relationship
Mhm.
and why it's being placed on the back burner. And so we really want to put relationships on the forefront, help couples become one again, right?
Mhm.
Remember, why do we choose us? Why do we choose each other?
Yes. And then how to actually maintain like that connection like long term as well, right? Because like you said, schedules, kids, work, I think there's all of these things that actually impact how deep we can take like the relationships that we currently have. I think in the age of technology, everything is just so quick paced and it's really hard to like find the time to slow down, which is what's actually like needed for connection, in my opinion.
And I will say, even I can resonate even with our own missions because I recently
Mhm.
got married last year and I'm building a business about date planning. Me and my husband, we're building our careers too, and we haven't made time for each other. So I really want to instill what I'm instilling in couples on for us as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And my husband is actually my co-founder for the repair app as well. So that definitely creates some challenges, especially the work part, right? And if you're building like a business together, if you're both really driven, I find that it's so easy for work to replace all of your conversations. And you wake up in the morning and you talk about like what you need to do, or you wake up in the morning you talk about like the kids, and during those early stages of dating you have so much time to actually get to know each other. And then when life gets in the way, I can see why a lot of couples like lose that spark or lose that sense of connection just because some of these other things get in the way. And it's really sad. And I think part of it is society and how society is built up nowadays, where it is so fast paced. So it requires like even more like intentionality than it would like when technology wasn't as advanced. Like maybe in the 1990s, like there was a little bit more time to slow down and actually connect with one another. Whereas now, we wake up, we go on our phones, scroll through social media, and before bed, we do the same thing. And no wonder like connection is suffering as a result of it.
Maybe we can talk about ways to keep that connection, that spark.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
maybe, I mean, I'll even say, even when you are in a moment of needing a moment,
Mm-hmm.
do not go to bed angry. As I know we all say that, but that's truly, truly important
Mm-hmm.
because you start building up that frustration the next day. And that
Mm-hmm.
sets the tone of the next morning, the next day, the next night.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we're starting to formulate is a pattern,
Mm-hmm.
right? We start forming resentment,
Mm-hmm.
frustration. We start getting the ick of our partners. And that's, we
Yeah,
don't want
the ick
that,
is real.
right? We don't want that.
The ick is real. And it's so important when you're saying like it's like if conflict goes unresolved, if we just try to sweep things like under the rug, it really does build up. And in most couples, like I see in my practice, it really is that resentment has been built up over the years. There's so many conversations that haven't actually been said. And you're right. Like, how can we feel love when we feel so much resentment towards our partner? Those emotions are so opposite in a lot of ways. It's so interesting that you say don't go to bed angry, because I think in a lot of situations we absolutely like need to resolve things. But then I've also seen in my couples that they will like stay up until 2, 3, 4 a.m. trying to resolve something that's not working because they're so tired, because their like cognitive resources are so depleted because they're not sleeping at that time. So it's kind of like, yes, I think it would be ideal if you could resolve conflict and not go to bed angry. But if it's a thing that's actually like interfering with your ability to resolve the conflict because you're both more vulnerable because you're not sleeping and you're going to regret your partner the next day because you have to wake up early and go to work, I think there is something about like scheduling some of these like repair sessions as well.
Yeah, and I like your point because to even, I guess I can rephrase, like even not necessarily fixing or resolving everything at
Mm-hmm.
the same night, but truly not ignoring your partner, right? Just
Yeah.
simply saying, hey, can we talk about this tomorrow? Can we
Mm-hmm.
schedule some time to, I really got to think things through before, I don't want to say anything up that I may regret later on. So really just communicating is the biggest piece.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's so interesting because I think a lot of us don't actually know how to communicate. I don't know what your experience has been, but like growing up, no one modeled how to repair after you get into a fight. Like people would just fight and then just sweep things under the rug, and then they would fight again, and then things would get swept under the rug. And I think as a society, we don't do a really good job at teaching people like how to navigate kind of like the post conflict part.
Yeah.
Like, how can you actually reconnect?
Yeah. That's really good. I think for me personally, I saw my parents not communicating,
Mhm.
and that only reinforced what I wanted in my relationship in the future. So I will say that really honed in for me. Like, if I want to build something long term, I have to do long term work.
Mhm. It sounds like you were very intentional about like seeking something that was very different from how you grew up. Yeah. And I think it's also interesting because a lot of clients that I work with, like we'll go through like relationship skills and things like that. And one of the things that I hear like after people learn them, it's like, wow, these things like should be taught in school. And I do agree. Why are we not teaching these things in school? I feel like the world would be a better place if people had some emotional regulation skills, if people knew like, hey, if someone is mad at me, here's how I navigate it. If I'm mad at someone, here's how I can communicate that in a way that actually leads to connection versus just like cutting people off like completely.
I totally agree. I think in school and in college, they
Mhm.
teach you things like the logistical things that they think you may need, but not what we truly need.
Yeah.
Emotional regulation. And I feel like a lot of things happened for me after I graduated from high school or
Mhm.
college. Like life really started for me. And I feel like I missed out on learning those things in
Mhm.
college, learning about life in school.
Mhm. Absolutely. And it's so interesting because we learn all of these things like equations and
Right?
functions and like chemistry and physics, but yet like we don't know how to file our taxes or
Right.
know how to regulate our nervous system or learn that, hey, we can actually use our words to communicate. We don't need to be screaming at someone. And you would think these would be such basic things. And, I'm aware that we're biased because this is kind of like our profession. Like we want people to like know more of the tools that we teach as well. And I'm sure if you talk to an accountant, they would be like, no, they need to learn how to like do taxes and all these other things. But there is something because the thing is like relationships are such a fundamental part of human nature. And it's so, so important to learn some basic tools and how to like navigate them, not just romantic relationships, but even relationships with friends or coworkers. I find that so often conflict happens, even at work, even in friendships, and no one really has the tools to be able to do something like that's actually helpful about it.
And now that you said that, like I totally agree. Like even learning about friendships early on in school, navigating those
Mm-hmm.
relationships helps us to communicate, helps us to notice those red flags or green flags
Mm-hmm.
in people
Yeah.
as we're growing up. Because for a long time, when you're around the same people in school, you automatically think you're friends.
Yeah.
Then you learn that you're not actually friends. You're just people that coexist
Yeah.
in the same classes.
Mhm. Yeah, and almost like how do you actually build trust with people over time? Because I find that people tend to oscillate between extremes. Either like we're too trusting and then we end up like getting hurt as a result because you see someone you're like, "Oh my gosh, best friend." Or the opposite, if we get hurt, then we kind of like block everyone out, right? And I think it's so important to know how to build trust over time, like how to be vulnerable in these like smaller steps over time so people actually prove to you whether they're trustworthy or not.
What do you think vulnerability looks like?
So it's really interesting. Have you heard of like Brene Brown?
No.
So her work, she does a lot of like work on vulnerability. And one of the things that she talks about, which I think is such like a beautiful metaphor, is that she's like, trust is like a jar of marbles.
Mhm.
Every time you do something and someone proves to you that you're trustworthy, you put one more marble in that jar. And some things, when it comes to sharing personal things about yourself, some things require you to have like five marbles in that jar and you can share it. Some things require you to have that jar like pretty full in order to actually share it. And the thing is that in order for people to actually get marbles, is that it does take a little bit of like a leap of faith. You share something small, and then when they prove to you that okay, they responded well to this small thing, then they get one more marble added.
Mm,
And then if they disappoint you in some ways, you can also take marbles out. And I thought that was like such a beautiful analogy that we can be vulnerable. We can take like those chances. But at the same time, like we want to be careful about how much that we're sharing and
mm,
saving the things that are really, really vulnerable for when the relationship actually has proven to you that this person, I can share this thing and they won't judge me. They'll actually like sit through the pain with me. They'll be there for me, even if they learn these things about me and they won't use it against me.
mm. That's so good. That's so good.
Yeah, Brene Brown is amazing.
Because I like the way you phrase that because I think a lot of couples throw back vulnerability
Mhm.
in each other's faces when there's conflict, right? And so that marble piece, I shared that with you. I shared that piece of
Mhm.
my life with you.
Yeah.
Now I want that marble back.
And that hurts so much. Like that is like the thing that hurts the most when you have taken a chance to be vulnerable and then someone does throw it back in your face in the middle of conflict. Like that is such a huge rupture right there. And it's so interesting because we get so angry in the moment that we actually forget that we love our partners or that, hey, this was someone that we once felt like really positively about. No matter how upset we are, it doesn't justify using personal information and throwing it in someone's face because that's just adding fuel to the fire. And then you're going to have to do even more repair afterwards because, like you said, something like really hurtful.
But I also think we have to be honest and talk about the elephant in the room. Like, what is causing some of those triggers?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think triggers is such an interesting one because I find that with couples more often than not, they're not really like responding to something that the partner said. It really is something that's a little bit like deeper rooted.
Yeah.
Either they feel disrespected, either they have like a history of not being heard. So then that anger is like them trying to fight so hard to be heard. Or their partner has done something that really hurts them. And then as a result, we want to hurt our partner back.
Mhm.
Which I can see how emotionally we would go there, but, like, hurting someone, like, pain doesn't cancel out pain at the
Right.
end of the day. Like, it just creates this experience where now both of us are hurt, both of us are suffering, and no one is actually regulated enough to be able to, like, handle this conversation effectively.
And it's more repairing that you have to do as well.
Yeah, way more repairing that you have to do. Like, oftentimes, I don't know what your experience is, but oftentimes, like, with my partner, like, most of the repairs happen because of things that we've actually said during the fight rather than the thing that triggered the fight. It might have been, like, the dishes, but then we go off on, like, each other, and then we have to repair on what was said rather than the initial conflict.
Exactly. No, that's honestly how I feel, and that's how I regulate in my own relationship. It's almost like looking at the iceberg, right?
Mhm.
Maybe the iceberg isn't the dishes. I just wanted to be seen. I saw I had a long day of work. I just wanted to be seen where you can take something off of my plate and I can take something off of yours. It wasn't necessarily dishes. It was
Mhm.
more I wanted to be seen by you.
It really is like when it comes to connection, it's so nonverbal, right? Like we don't want to say to our partners what we need. We just want them to like just get it sometimes, you know? And I think we talk about validation a lot of the times as something that's really verbal. It makes sense that you feel that way, or I can see how hurt you felt about that. And that can definitely help. But I think there is like this deeper level of validation, which is doing something for your partner that you know that they need, even when they haven't actually like explicitly expressed it.
Even working with couples right now too, like most of them are saying we haven't experienced a romantic night in a long time.
Mm,
Or my partner isn't the most romantic.
mm,
So that can cause a lot of frustration too because the need is I want to feel loved and seen by you, but
mhm.
you're not willing to provide those romantic gestures that I am seeking. And it's
Yeah.
like, how do we balance that? And I always tell them sometimes it takes getting out of your own way, you know, try to do things that they do like. That way
Mm.
you can feel more compelled to do things that you like. It's like a even in my opinion.
No, absolutely. I think in the beginning, we're so intentional with the things that we do, right? Like we want to win over the other person. So we're way more likely to do these like big romantic gestures, planning these really elaborate date nights. And we do it with such joy. And part of it is like, the honeymoon stage, all like neurotransmitters going off in the brain. But somewhere along the way, I feel like we really lose that intentionality behind things. And I think we really see it, especially with like the dating part. It's so, so important to have these positive experiences in the relationship because the way I think of it, it's almost like it provides a buffer like
Mhm.
from the conflict. The more connected you are, the more quality time you're spending like together, the more of the buffer you have. So when conflict does arise, you're starting from like a place of positive emotions for each other, not from a place of disconnection. And then it's just a conflict is adding even more fuel to that fire.
Mhm.
And I think part of it is how do we bring that intentionality back? And when you reached out to me like and introduced Chima, I thought it was just such an amazing idea because it really is about bringing back this intentional piece.
Mhm.
And this is like a service where, hey, we don't have to spend hours and hours actually like planning dates, which is time consuming. And as a relationship progresses, more stress or kids, other things get in the way. So I think it's amazing like what you guys are doing at Chima. And I think it will make like a big, big difference for a lot of couples.
Thank you so much for saying that because even just watching social media, like
Mhm.
a lot of couples and even our society are very performative.
So performative.
I
So
mean,
performative.
every time they make a video, they get monetary value from that.
Mhm.
And so my thing is, how is your relationship off the camera? How
Mhm.
is your relationship after the big wedding? Can you sit with your partner? Can you be around them?
And that's such a good point because it's about like, I think the Gottmans talk about these rituals of connection. And in the beginning of the relationship, you automatically have some of those rituals, right? You know that you need to plan dates if you want to win the other person over. That's like a ritual that's well known in our society. You know that, the next step after that is anniversaries. You have to like celebrate like the anniversaries. And then maybe it's like the engagement and maybe like the wedding. So all of these things are already sort of built into the society. But those are just there for up until like the wedding part. And then what do we do afterwards? Because we still have to spend years and years. If you're in a monogamous relationship, you have to spend years and years with this person.
Mhm.
So, and I think that's where as a society we fail is that there's nothing that comes from that to actually be able to like celebrate or know how to connect in these ways. And I think that's where like that intentional piece like really comes in. Like we have to make more of an effort because it's not something that we do automatically anymore. And unfortunately, that's where a lot of relationships actually suffer.
And I feel like that's when your app comes in, right? Your platform. We should repair early on, not when things
Mhm.
are hard, not when
Yeah.
things are, just repair easily. I think that should be a form of habit in any relationship, whether it's healthy, whether it's new, whether it's, we have already built years into this.
Mhm.
Repair shouldn't be deemed as negative.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that was our kind of like mission, like with repair. It's a lot of people like don't do couples therapy. There's a lot of stigma in a lot of cultures around the world when it comes to like therapy in general, let alone couples therapy, where even if you have the courage to actually seek out help, maybe your partner might not want to. So we wanted to kind of provide like a low effort tool that those couples can still have when therapy isn't accessible or when one partner doesn't want to go to therapy. How can you still change your part of the relationship? Because it really goes both ways. And sometimes if we make some changes like on our side, it leads to other changes in like the person because you're completely shifting the dynamic that has been created between the two of you. So we'll see how it goes as a business. Startups are hard, as I'm sure you can imagine.
Well, I guess the last piece I would like to touch on, I guess I dislike the word therapy or coaching has such a
Mhm.
negative connotation in our
Yeah.
society today. Like, what could really bring value to people and couples, like, they choose not to use it because it's such a negative connotation.
Yeah. Usually, like in couples therapy, when one partner is like more resistance towards like coming, I hear a lot like, oh, this means like I'm broken, or this means that there's something wrong with us in the relationship. And that's why we need like a quote unquote fix. And it's changing. I think, especially in like Western society, we see more and more people seeking like couples therapy or individual therapy. But then there's also countries around the world where we're so behind and there's still so much stigma associated with it, including like my own country, like in Albania. As soon as like you hear the word therapy, people are like, well, I'm not crazy. I'm not going to do that. If you suggest it to people, I'm like, it's not about being crazy. It's just, if you have the flu, you know that you need to take Advil, you know that you need to go to the doctor. There's steps that you can take. So if you're feeling anxious, if you're feeling depressed, these are like the flu of mental health that we can actually seek help. So I think that destigmatization process is so important.
And this also brings us to the point of why we created How We Love Now, like
Mhm.
our podcast, because I
Yeah.
think the way technology is advancing and the way we used to love is very different from how we're going to love
Mhm.
moving forward. And
Yeah.
it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's what we all have to adjust and transition.
Absolutely. In your opinion, like what are some changes that you see technology making in our relationships?
That's a good question. I would say I believe relationships are becoming more dependent on like digitals, like phones, AI. And I think it is good AI because we're using AI in our platforms, but I also want to create a space where we're not reaffirming for people to be independent. I mean, for people to be dependent on AI. We just want to enhance that flow.
Mhm.
And so I just think that if we can create more real life connections, real life experiences,
Mhm.
that's the alternative where we can enhance AI and bring back connection.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I do think AI is such like a valuable resource. There's obviously, pros and cons to it, like any other resource that's or new an emergency technology. But it is helpful. I think we could definitely use it as a tool. What I don't think it can do is like replace the human connection itself.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting because there is research coming out now that a lot of people actually feel more validated by ChatGPT in their relationships. And one of the things that worries me a little bit about that when it comes to relationships is that AI is meant to be perfect.
Yeah.
It's it has all of the knowledge that has ever been published on like the internet. That's how it's been trained. But the human brain can't actually do that. So what worries me sometimes is that, and I see this like with clients, they'll go on ChatGPT and be like, oh, I felt validated. Why can my partner do this for me? And it's like, your partner isn't meant to. Your partner's brain works very different than the AI. So I think in a lot of ways, we're raising like the standard of how our partners like need to respond to us, how friends need to respond to us, how other people in the world need to respond to us. But it's also very worrisome because it's not going to give you the same level of validation that you will get from ChatGPT or from some of these like other AI systems.
That's so good because we're almost trying to perfect a human,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
we're trying to perfect change someone that we can't change.
Yeah. Like ChatGPT isn't going to forget, that it's like your anniversary today because it's been built into it that it's not, can't forget. Whereas human brains are forgetful. We forget to put the dishes away. We forget our anniversaries. We forget other important things. We forget that, my partner had a very important meeting and I need to follow up with that. So I wonder if in a lot of ways, like it's adding even more pressure to like the relationships. And I wonder if it might cause more conflict down the line because we're interacting more with AI now too.
And oftentimes we're training our own AI, right? Because sometimes when
Yeah.
AI comes back in the chat, we say, make it
Mhm.
better or fix this, or I didn't mean it like this. So we're actually training the AI because sometimes they give us or generate content that's not even what we wanted.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's like it almost doesn't require us to be effective in order to get a good response, right? Like we can be as abusive as we want to ChatGPT and it's always going to like give the perfect response. It's not going to take things seriously, but that's because it doesn't have emotions. Whereas if I were to talk to my partner, sometimes like the way I talk to ChatGPT, when I'm like, edit this, do this, I'm sure he would be very upset with me.
Right, right. Right, because we can't edit our partner, we can't edit a friend.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Exactly. So it's really interesting because it's almost like in a lot of ways, we can be less effective and we'll still get like a very, very beautiful response. But I wonder if then what ends up happening, and I don't know if this will happen or not, is that we also learn that to expect the same perfect response from
Right.
our partner, but also it takes the accountability away from us that we can talk in any way and still get that level of response. So I think it's tricky in that way.
And we're forcing ourselves to be less open.
Mhm.
Because I'm not gonna be open to what you have to say if I'm relying on AI.
Yeah. Or like a difference in opinion because ChatGPT is trained to give you exactly what you're looking for. And I don't know where it will go, but I can certainly see it changing like a lot of like relationship dynamics.
And I'm excited to navigate all these different topics
Mhm.
throughout our podcast, How We Love Now. We're gonna talk about dating, relationships, being a founder, creating your own business. So many things that people are scared to talk about. We're gonna talk about those things.
I am so, so excited. And one of the things that Kiana and I were talking about even before we started this first episode is that we really want this to be authentic.
Mhm.
We are going to share with you just kind of like our personal opinions in a lot of ways, like our professional opinions in a lot of ways, and also like our journey in building in like this like relationship and tech space.
I mean, I just think the concept is we're gonna show up who we are. We're gonna show you the messiness of behind the scenes, and we're also gonna show you the highlights. And I think that's so important is bringing visibility to the things that need to be shown.
Yeah, absolutely. In a lot of ways, technology has kind of taken that authenticity. Like everything looks very polished. And even in my, like the repair social media page, like I'm there with like my whole setup, ring lights, trying to like talk in like very professional ways. But I think with this podcast, based on like what we've been talking about, is that it's really important to both of us to have it be a little bit more authentic. So we'll share lots of tips with you. We'll explore different topics. Maybe down the line, we'll see how it goes, have some guest speakers talk about different topics as well. But honestly, I'm just really excited to see where the podcast goes.
Me too.